So in the last movie, we looked at how we could turn an unordered list into a design panel with just a little bit of CSS. With this example, we're going to take a look at grids. Grids are very important for design, and in this example, we want to create a grid-based layout of 6 different portrait pictures. So in the days before CSS, how would you think this would have been done, Molly?
Oh, that's definitely a table. I mean, it's screaming.
I think is important for designers now to understand is that we need to start thinking about not how we implement a design layout with markup, but how we see through the design that we want to achieve and understand exactly what it is that the elements mean.
It's very true because, when you think about the use of tables, the way we're using them now is for exactly what they were developed for, tabular data. And in this case, this isn't tabular data. It's an image with a name.
So let's take a look over into our text editor and see what code I've used to make this. And once again, a straightforward, unordered list, this time with 6 different list items. Each one has been given a unique ID.
It's just absolutely amazing how little markup is used there. Had this been a table, it would have been probably 3 or 4 times the size in terms of code weight.
Possibly more.
Yeah.
So from something as small as that, back over to our finished result. So let's run through the process and see how we built this. First of all, I'm going to save the file and preview this, just so that you know that I'm telling the truth. And there is a straightforward unordered list, just with our default browser style and also our global style sheet that we're using for all these examples. So let's start building up some CSS. The first thing I'm going to do is to style the unordered list itself. Notice again that I'm using position relative, not because the list itself has been moved or offset, but so that it can establish itself as a positioning context for any positioned items that might sit inside it. Once again, I've removed the default markers, given the list a width, and zeroed out the margins and paddings. So let's save this. Hop back over into Firefox and do a refresh. Still nothing particularly exciting going on, but this is where it really starts to get fun. Now that we've styled the list, we can style the elements that sit inside it. And here I'm using the element selector for LI to add the rules where I float each one of the list items left, assign a width, some padding to the bottom, and now also notice that I'm using border right and border bottom. And here I'm using the shorthand property where I can combine various rules together. So I'm saying that border right is a 1 pixel width, a solid border, and a colour of a dark grey. So let's save this. Bounce back over into Firefox. And now we're almost starting to see a table layout.
Yeah.
See a table layout being built
out of a list.
Not, of course, that you should ever use inappropriate markup and CSS to create what should be a table.
Exactly.
If we were going to be building a table for tabular data, then we should be using a table for markup.
Very, very true. Although there is a component of CSS that does allow for the creation of tables, it's not supported, unfortunately, by a number of browsers at this point in history.
Now, we gave each one of the list items its own unique ID. And for simplicity, I just called them 1, 2, 3, etc. But they could have been called Andy, Molly, Linda. Now I'm going to take a group of rules. And here we can see that I've used, for Li with an ID of 1, I've assigned a background image, set it to not repeat, positioned it 50% from the left, and 10 pixels from the top of the item. And I've done a similar rule for list item 2 and list item 3, but also notice that I've now, on list item 3, got border right 0. I'm removing the right border on that particular list item.
I'm going to put you on the spot, Andy. Didn't you suggest that people not mix their value types when positioning background graphics?
I did indeed.
So how do you explain that?
It all depends on what we call the browser matrix and the type of browsers that we will be supporting for our customers. Some of the older browsers have problems when you mix those measurements. But in a lot of my work now, I'm dealing with clients which will use more modern browsers, so Firefox, Opera, Safari, and also Internet Explorer 6 and soon to be 7, where this problem actually doesn't arise.
So anybody really creating for very contemporary browsers would not have to worry as much.
No.
It's just a better practice if you do or have the potential to worry with backward compatibility not to mix those values.
Absolutely. So let's save this. Back over into Firefox and refresh. And, oh, it's not looking how we expected it to look there, is it, Molly?
I don't see anybody's face. It seems a little odd.
Okay, well, we can soon fix that. One of the important things to do when we're building up examples like this is to take them through step by step. When we're building these live, we're almost building them like we're doing for this movie. And rather than go ahead and add all the rules at once, it makes much more sense to build them up. And then we can see exactly where conflicts arise or where particular problems are coming in. So it's a step-by-step process. What I'm going to do now is to add some rules. And here we can see that I'm using some grouped selectors. So here I'm targeting the anchors that sit inside list item 3, 2, and 1. And I separated each of those with a comma as they're grouped together. And here I'm now setting a padding top on the anchor itself of 160 pixels, which coincidentally is the height of the image that I'm using.
Ah, so that's why it was collapsed, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so you have to set the explicit.
And now, for 4, 5, and 6, I'm doing the opposite. I'm saying padding bottom.
I see. Wow, so it's the padding that's enabling us to see the revealed image.
And now one final rule, which is a rule for all anchors that sit inside list items, where I've said display block to force the anchor to be clickable in all areas, and also set text align center. I've added these into a separate rule to group those rules together, rather than add display block and text align center to each of the style rules. And it's a way of keeping our CSS smaller and more efficient. So now, if we save that, bounce back over into Firefox and do a refresh, coming together very nicely.
There we go. We're beginning to see progress toward the end result here.
Okay, so one or two final things. I'm going to add a rule for the links, and I'm going to add some styling for the last group of list items that form the bottom row. And notice here that I've also added some different rules to what I did for 1, 2, and 3. I'm setting a padding top. I'm positioning these background images, again 50% from the left, but now 3EM fluid measurement, so that the background image itself will move as the text is enlarged in the browser. And for the bottom row, I've removed the border. So let's save that, back over into Firefox and refresh. And there we go.
Wow, that's incredible, huh? So it's fascinating to me that the padding is what helped us get the space that we need. Why would we choose the padding instead of margin?
Well, the reason for that is that I wanted all of the area of the list item to be clickable. So, for example, I didn't just want the name of Linda to be clickable. I also wanted the picture to be clickable as well. Now, you remember in a previous movie you mentioned that background images weren't clickable.
Exactly.
But what we've done here is we've applied the background image, but then some padding on the element with display block, so that the element is actually larger in essence, and sits over the background.
Wow, and therefore the whole thing becomes clickable.
Now, if you want to see that in action, what we can do is we can use the web developer extension in Firefox. And here what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down to here and I'm going to outline custom elements. And I'm going to show you now, if I type in LI, it's going to outline all list items in red. But here, if I type in A, it's going to outline all anchors in green. So then you'll be able to see how this works.
Wow, that's impressive.
So let's turn off these outlining around LIs. And just to prove the point, all of that area is clickable. Not just the words or the pictures. That whole area inside the green box is clickable.
So another question would be, you mentioned during the demonstration that you're using the M's on the bottom in order to allow for text resizing.
Yeah, let's have a look at that. Let's refresh this, just to get rid of those green borders. And now I'm using Control Plus in Firefox to increase the size of the text. And as the text increases, the appropriate amount of spacing in the background image is still maintained. If I'd have set this in pixels, as I increase the text, the background image would stay in the same place and the text would overlap
yeah.
it. So, there we go. Something which in the past would have involved using a table for essentially what is a list of people. We've now used a semantically appropriate unordered list and styled it within CSS.